Welcome back to the NutriMedical Report and our special panel. John Moore, who has his own show from 7 to 9 a.m., Monday to Friday Central Standard Time on the Republic Radio. The website is thelibertyman.com. Our scientist, Ken Morrison, at homeland-defense4u.com. And lots of updates. John, tell us the latest, what's going on, and what are you trying to verify, and what is the breaking news?
Well, thank you, Dr. Bill. Good to be here. Well, we're working on a follow-up with a number of private sources on the status of Russian troops coming into the United States. I hope to have some interviews from eyewitnesses this coming week on my show. And a couple of stories we're following up on. I don't like to go public until I have corroboration, but some stories that are very concerning, if they turn out to be true, that if we do get corroboration, we'll certainly go public with them.
Yeah.
And bottom line, the Russians are here. They are arriving in greater numbers. That's a well-established fact at this point in time. There's conflicting stories as to why they're here. Their mission statement, none of which are good. And we just continue to track these stories and be ready to respond in whatever appropriate manner we need to.
Yeah, exactly. The first question you'd ask is, number one, what are the numbers? We know, I knew that back even in the mid-'90s there were a lot of Russians and other former CIS Soviet nations, people being trained in our weapons and tactics. They weren't just left here. Some of them were actually not just here for a period of time. Some of them actually were literally given long-term, if you want to call it, ability to stay in the country under pseudo-jobs, basically just waiting as sleeper agents. We actually had sleeper cells that we identified in Colorado when I was working there, and I had people that were inside the intelligence service that actually identified their locations, and we even visited some of them and decided, hey, look, these guys are Russian. What are they doing here? They're in Littleton, Colorado, or they're in Greenwood Village or whatever. It was crazy. That's the first thing. So it's real. It's been going on a long time, and at any one time there can be anywhere from 500,000 to 1.2 million foreign soldiers from nations all over the world, from Canada, Brazil, being trained in weapons and tactics. And I'm thinking, why would we do that unless we're either going to invite them in here at some point to suppress the American population, or we're going to sell them our equipment so that they can use our equipment to suppress their own populations? Because this is basically a form of civil defense suppression type of thing. It's not a foreign invasion force. These forces are specifically designed to deal with civilian battle in U.S. cities and rural areas.
Absolutely, and I believe you pretty explicitly gave the two choices. I'm not aware of a third choice.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah, I think that. The other thing is a story that we've been following. And I mentioned about a month ago when we started following the story about the approach of the Death Star. We call it the Passover Star. The fact is, we know it is coming in. Multiple sources have kind of tried to kind of push the envelope that it's coming in sooner than expected. We know the government are doing what we call logistic game ops. I don't believe that things are happening now, but we are going to get some reports from Ann in a moment on sinkholes, and Christina Consolo. There are some earth changes occurring and some releases of gases, including radon and other gases that are coming from Fukushima that are highly radioactive, being released from the hulls of the Earth all over the planet. So there's planetary changes occurring. I think the government basically knows something's going to happen, and they don't have accurate enough data, so they just want to have everything logistically in place. But we're not talking about decades. We're talking about years away or months away from something cataclysmic, whether it's the pneumatic system fault line breaking, which is very likely because there's a tremendous increase in activity, or the San Andreas faults, which we've had major activity on over the last few years, and we're due for another earthquake like the 1995 earthquake in California. The fault extension in Mexico is not called the same name, but it's the same darn fault system. So, and you can kind of talk about that in the sinkholes. What's going on there?
Well, we're having sinkholes across the country, but the most alarming ones are occurring in the subsidence area of Louisiana, of coastal Louisiana.
You got an amazing report. Tell us about it, because that's when I heard what you said, and of course I cross-checked it with Christina Consol and other sources. You got some important news here. Tell us.
Yeah, this sinkhole. Well, they had been noting earthquakes, and the USGS scientists you know, he just thought that it was noise, so he just kind of ignored the fact that people were complaining about earthquakes. And then he finally got wised up, and he discovered that the earthquakes they were feeling were in the noise, and that's why he hadn't registered them. So they're very small earthquakes, and they were not seismic earthquakes. What they were was earth slippage. And so, and we know that the coastal area of Louisiana is subsiding, that is sinking. And so these earthquakes went on for about a month, and then suddenly they stopped, and the next day a huge sinkhole appeared. And this sinkhole was in the middle of an area where oil companies had been drilling down into a salt dome. Now, a salt dome is a protrusion of salt up into the soil or into the ground. And what oil companies do is they drill down and they drill into the salt and they make a cavern, and then they use that to hold butane or radioactive materials or methane. And in any case, the sinkhole occurred very close to a well in the salt dome that was holding butane. Now, there's a lot of butane and oil and everything transferred from Oklahoma and Texas into Louisiana, and so there's a lot of pipes in the ground. And one of the sinkhole just kept growing bigger and bigger, and finally on August 2 weeks ago, Governor Jindal declared a state of emergency for Assumption Parish, and at that time the sinkhole was 372 feet in diameter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal. And he ordered an evacuation, a mandatory evacuation, and then last week on Thursday, the Department of Homeland Security collected next of kin data from the residents who disobeyed the mandatory evacuation. And then they decided that they brought in workers because, if we've got pipes going through a sinkhole, they bend because they're not being supported underneath. And the sinkhole was exposing some piping that was carrying butane and oil and gas and methane. And they didn't want those pipes to bend to the point that they would break and let their product escape, because that would have been that could have created a...
Well, you know how dangerous butane is. I mean, you mentioned how bad the explosion would be and how many people would die if this thing, within 10 miles they get third-degree burns, that you mentioned to me before the show. Subsidence, of course, this is similar to Aceh, Indonesia. There's a process called specific gravity. And when you pump in water or seawater, in place of oil, you pump out underneath these tectonic plates. Remember now, the tectonic plates are floating on an ocean of abiotic oil. This is not brontosaurus. This is not ancient ferns and plants that are being turned into oil. This is ancient abiotic oil created by the nuclear reactor called the planet Earth. Earth is a nuclear reactor with a crust on it, which we live on, with a thin blue line of air around it and a magnetic field that prevents us from dying from cosmic background radiation, gamma rays, and zeta particles that zip through our body and neutrinos. So when you actually think about it, it's amazing we're actually alive, isn't it?
Well, yeah. In any case, what they were doing, they finally called in DHS, that's at the federal level, and they started making the workers wear respirators, and they told Texas Brine, which was the one who had been shipping in the butane and storing it in Louisiana in the salt domes, what they want them to do is to drill down a relief well. In other words, they want to drill down a well and then see if the salt dome is still intact or if it's got cracks in it. Because if it has cracks in it, then the butane could start escaping. And if the butane escapes, it'll turn into a gas, and it's being likened to a hydrogen bomb.
Oh boy, not a pleasant situation at all.
Well, that was Dr. DEAGLE's NUTRIMEDICAL report, Earth Changes. They went on a commercial break, which I cannot play right now, so we have to wait. Please use this as a radio show. You don't have to stare at the computer. Nothing's going to change. You're not going to miss anything. And it's the middle of the night. It took me a while to get this part of the show because it's on a loop. But alrighty, then we'll wait for the commercial break to come back. And just go ahead and do what you need to do. Go get some exercise, go walk around, do stuff that you need to have done, and I'll do the same while I'm listening. You and I are listening to it at the same time. I haven't heard this before. Still a commercial. So we have to wait. Let me turn my phone down. Alrighty. That way that won't interrupt us.
It is our mission.
No, not yet. So, as soon as they're back, I'll turn the sound back up and listen to the show. And make sure you're prepared for anything, because I'm getting all kinds of conflicting reports going across the internet about but a lot of them say Nibiru is in our solar system. So we'll see what happens. Keep your eye to the sky. Let's see if they're back. I actually stayed up pretty late last night after listening to another guy's interpretation about what's going to happen. And so, and he was saying prepare, just be prepared. So we'll see what happens. And he did mention Dr. DEAGLE, so I'm thinking he got most of the same information the same way we did from the NUTRIMEDICAL report. Okay. So get your grabbing, or even if you're just watching, you know, just listening to the show now, start making your, grab a backpack or something and start your grab and go bag if you haven't done it already, with your medical supplies, extra pills if you take them, extra clothes, at least a couple days worth of clothes, canned food. Make sure you pack your can opener, some pens, anything you think you can trade. If you don't have a lot of money, stuff you can trade that people might need. You might have to trade a necklace for a roll of toilet paper, for all you know. I mean, not a gold necklace, but you know, just some kind of nice necklace that you think you could trade for some gasoline, or if you're a woman and you have makeup, that's going to be valuable stuff. Makeup will be valuable to somebody that needs makeup, that can't get it anymore.
We are a GCN radio network.
Welcome back, and we had a good time to go over the preparedness list. I'm going to do a major written update on the 10 plus 10 plus 10 list. Those bands, by the way, that were mentioned on the show, and the UV bands, I think are a good idea, you know, where people have a band they could put on the wrist. Because one of the best ways to measure whether or not we're heading into some tough times is that we're going to get lots of solar radiation. And you mentioned in one of the previous shows that July 12th, we had a CME that had pulsing ultraviolet light. So during the day, people weren't getting just regular light, they were getting blasted with very high levels of ultraviolet light caused by this coronal mass ejection. It was pulsing or the Earth with this UV light. The ozone layer combination thinning and the magnetosphere thinning combined with increased solar activity makes it very variable and very dangerous at times, and also very likely to destroy crops. So besides the drought, the increased space weather problems are going to increase the chances of crop failure. And anybody into commodities that's listening to this program should know that they're the way to invest in the next few years is going to be commodities.
Yeah, actually, the UV pulse wasn't associated with the CME. The CME came in 2 days later.
Okay, was it just the sun strobing, or what happened?
Well, they haven't said exactly. They said that there was a strobing of the Earth by a very concentrated UV ultraviolet light, and that it came through, apparently through the ozone hole that's over Greenland, and probably is responsible for the ice melt that occurred on Greenland. I noticed they haven't published any more pictures, but I haven't looked for any either.
Yeah, by the way, UV light transforms to cause deep cracks in ice much better than infrared light. UV light is very bad for... The reason why the poles are melting is because of higher ultraviolet light coming in and boiling from below with increased underoceanic volcanism like the Gakau Range, which is 1,500-mile volcanic mountain range that's as high as the Swiss Alps. So when people try to think global warming, we're having extremes of weather now, right? The general trend is going to, number one, harm crops. Number two, we're heading into an increased rainfall. And even if it got warmer, the rainfall is the thing in the northern latitudes that'll drive us into an ice age, which is where we're headed.
Well, that's right. It has to do with the amount of water that's in the air, and we're getting more evaporation out of the ocean because the ocean is spreading out, and so we have a higher area from which to evaporate. And in addition, the ocean is getting warmer, and so when it's warmer, then it evaporates more water vapor out of it in order to maintain its temperature.
It's heat from below, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, no, they're not saying that so much. Well, that depends on whether you believe in global warming or the greenhouse effect, one or the other. But it is getting warmer. They know that, and you can look on the Navy maps and see the climate change on there. I mean, they show a dramatic increase in temperature up in the northern, well, above 45 degrees latitude in the northern half of the northern hemisphere.
What about all these sinkholes? They're all over the world now. What do you think is going on?
Well, and probably different things at different places. But I'm very concerned about these sinkholes that are down by Louisiana. You know, we had the Macondo well that drilled into the methane clathrate cavern, and we're still leaking methane clathrate out of there. We're building up a big bubble of methane underneath the Gulf of Mexico, 5 miles down. And I understand there's a 20-story high methane bubble off the coast of San Diego. Now, the oil companies, they want to mine the natural gas, the methane clathrates. They want to do it to the point that they're doing it even without permission. In other words, they send down their oil wells, and if they just happen to punch into a methane cavern, well, golly, we've got methane. Let's bottle that and sell it as natural gas. And all the oil companies are looking to go from oil to natural gas. They think it's
which is primarily methane, isn't it?
Primarily methane, yes.
Yeah.
There's going to be contaminants in it, and some of those will be radioactive contaminants, and they'll be. But they go through a refining process, and they add an odorant so that you can tell when you're around it, and then they pipe it into our homes. But they're looking in the middle of the country. They're looking off the coast of California, and they're looking, of course, in the Gulf of Mexico. But really, they're not looking so much for oil now. Now they want to go to natural gas because it has a better PR factor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So they're living on the edge, and unfortunately, these things where we're getting these sinkholes is exposing. Well, it could expose some of those caverns. The methane is kept under very high pressure in these caverns. The methane is at such high pressure that it associates water with the methane. So there might be 20 water molecules attached to a single methane molecule in a cavern. And then when it comes out through a migration channel, and in fact, in some of the reports that have been published on this thing in Louisiana, on the sinkhole in Louisiana, are saying, well, maybe it's a migration channel. it's not because we were drilling there. It's just that methane migrates out of its cavern, and all of a sudden we've got a methane problem. Anyway, the land is subsiding, and it's subsiding both along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, Louisiana, and Texas, and it's also subsiding off the southern coast of California, down around San Diego. And that's probably due to the oil companies drilling the wells and sucking out the oil, and potentially tapping into some of the methane caverns or the butane caverns or whatever they've got. So this is not a good sign on either on the Gulf of Mexico or in Southern California.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, there's actually a large deposit of oil and oil class rates off of the Pendleton Marine Corps base, and they estimate somewhere around 15 to 30 billion barrels of oil just off that coast in one deposit. What they're doing, though, is they're pumping out oil and putting down salt water, which is a different specific gravity, so it's not surprising they're getting subsidence in the Louisiana coast. John, one of the things I want to kind of revisit here, and I'd like you to get your response to this, because a lot of people think that when we're going through the process that we call journalistically vetting things, we don't make a pronouncement that, on a certain date or whatever something's going to happen. We say this is our sources of information. I'd like you to clarify that, because a lot of people don't realize this is a process that's ongoing. And, can you tell us that?
The what a journalist does, and by definition, all of us are journalists, and I'm doing the work of an investigative journalist. We get information, and we check it out to the best of our ability to verify that it's accurate, and then we have the responsibility to report that information and be the messenger. And sometimes we're put into a quandary where the information has a strong likelihood of being true, but we can't verify it is. So if we withhold the information and it turns out to be true, people could get hurt because we did not report it. If we go ahead and report it and it turns out to be inaccurate, then we end up with egg on our face because nothing happened.
Well, we're at another commercial break. Stand by. And I'll turn it back up when he comes back. So, well, what he just said is, I don't know if he's saying that he has egg on his face because nothing happened yet, but he's saying he reported that incoming object, Nibiru, that's actually a constellation of planets and things. I was looking in Australia, they're taking pictures of a planet that's coming up, and they take pictures of it, so there's something going on. But they can't give the exact date, but he felt he needed to report that. I give him a thumbs up. That's better than what they did with the Fukushima accident, huh? That's still ongoing. And they're just barely starting to report on it now. 600 days, 500 something days later. Well, we all do the same thing. You see breaking news? I'd rather get it out. That way you know what's going on. As it comes out, and they say it's verified, then I'm putting it out. They want to retract it later, if I need to retract it later, but I'm still rolling with whatever they said, because they're usually they are right. So they just don't want to stir a panic. That's all. Can't have a panic. Can't incite a panic. Alright, let's see if they're almost back. It might be a short break. Let's see.
That's in the mainstream news every day. Millions.
Well, Alex Jones commercial. Well, we're waiting. I guess as you and I are finding out about everything, what's going on right now. I bet he backs himself up and says he checked out the sources. We'll see. Nope, not yet. Well, at least you're desensitized to it. I think they say it enough times, by the time it happens, you just say, oh, okay. It's like, hurry up and wait. Just be prepared. Make sure you have your emergency kit, flashlights, maybe even a magnifying glass, a mirror. Magnifying glass, I think you start fires without matches. And then what else? Make sure you have a couple life jackets on you in the back seat of your car. And I would start taking your prepared run and go bag. Basically, if you're not too far away, leave it at home. But if you're going somewhere far, I would take or make a copy of it, have an extra one in your car, and make sure you have plenty of water. And filters of some sort. And even maybe some kind of, you know how some stuff like the painters use, and some good mask in there too. Oh, he's back.
Welcome back to the NutriMedical Report. And John, you had a couple of interesting things just while we were on break. You had a call.
Yeah, during the break, and this may be helpful for everybody, Dr. Bill. I've been a radio talk show host since 1995. I've developed working relationships with other talk shows around the country, which served a good purpose all these years just for doing radio talk shows. But now that same men and women that I've worked with all these 16, 17 years, we've become what might be referred to as a private intelligence network. And we're networking, we're discussing, we're talking about what's going on. The call I just got 2-3 minutes ago was absolutely frenzied in terms of the sense of urgency that the event is near, that the Russians are here to help us out in our time of need, allegedly, during this transition period after the flyby of Neighborhood. And that further confirmation that U.S. Northcom will basically be our new government for some period of time, U.S. Northern Command, and that Denver will be our new national capital for the foreseeable future, beginning very soon.
Well, we know that the CIA directorship is moved from Langley, Virginia to Aurora, Colorado. Isn't it kind of strange that Mr. Holmes also resided when he was going to school in Aurora, Colorado?
Well, I'm not sure what the connection is there, but...
I just know it's a geographic connection. I'm not going to bring it any further than that. But we know the government's preparing. They probably know more than they're going to say, and they don't want to, quote, panic the public.
Oh, man.
And whether or not it's going to be in 2 months, 6 months, or 2 years, they're getting ready. And getting ready based on solid science. They got the Chandra X-ray telescope, they got IRAS, they got the stereo telescopes looking at the sun and solar objects in space. A red dwarf Class C star can only be seen with an X-ray telescope or infrared. You can't see with a regular light telescope. Even with the Hubble, you're not going to see it. You have to use these other types of telescopes. It has a moderate gravitonic effect, but because it's a red dwarf Class 3, it has an incredibly powerful magnetic field. So I'm sure that there's, like the magnetic array satellites that the Japanese put up 3 years ago, they probably can see this strange geomagnetic dipole coming into our solar system that will probably trigger off some major solar storms, and the likelihood that that's going to knock out power in the northern hemisphere, as I said in other shows, is virtually 90% in the next 2 years, somewhere in the northern hemisphere, and possibly southern, we're going to have some major blackouts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
at the very least. And then, of course,
I get notes. I'm sure you and Ann both get notes. People thinking they're walking out in their backyard and looking at the 10th planet. But for all the reasons you state, that's not possible.
No, it's not possible. But what's going to happen is that this astronomer from Brazil, a very senior astronomer for the National Academy down there, has seen it. There are people that are leaking information from the South Pole Telescope. There's an international consortium of countries that are doing the Arecibo Telescope in Chile, which is run by the Vatican. They all know that this is happening. this star actually is the same star they call the Satan star, Herculebus, same star that returned at the time of the Exodus of the Hebrews that destroyed, triggered off there the super explosion in the eastern Mediterranean that destroyed the Minoans and caused this fall of the second kingdom of the ancient Egyptians. So, you know, these are cycle events, and it's coming back. Okay, we can see it coming back. And in fact, these scientists probably have an idea based on velocity, trajectory, etc., when they expect to have its maximum gravitational and/or plasma effects on the sun.
Absolutely. Well, Phil, I've been at this 12 years now, since the spring of 2000, and it's been about the last 3 years I came to understand the true nature of human beings occupying this planet and the cycles human beings go through, coming up out of the mud where they've been smashed on by the 10th planet and almost wiped out about every third cycle, reaching whatever level of culture, civilization, engineering, science they reach, only to get smacked down all over again.
Right. In fact, it's roughly 3 cycles ago when, and that was told us when I went to the U.S. Space Command, that the Black Knight satellite, which is put in polar orbit, which we only achieved in the last, I think, 5 to 10 years, to put satellites in polar orbit. This satellite is over 22,000 miles just inside the Van Allen radiation belt and larger than the U.S. Space Station. And I was told, and they asked me, how many years do you think that's been up there? I said, I don't know. They said it's been up there between 12 and 35,000 years.
I never heard I heard 12,000 years from my sources. I never heard that larger number.
Yeah, they said it's a lot. It's 12,000 plus. They said 12,000.
Well, that's a fair estimate.
Right. In other words, it's been up there. Human civilization has risen and fallen. Just the ancient pictures of Vimana and other craft. Human beings. Just think of it this way: in a little over 100 years, human beings have gone from the Wright brothers to interstellar travel, and our real space programs are far more advanced than people will admit. You know, the fact is that we are incredibly inventive. We are literally creating the image of the Creator God, and it says in the Bible, now they are in one place and of one tongue. We are now with the Internet. Nothing will be restrained or withheld from our imaginations.
Gaining access to the contents of the Black Knight satellite could have advanced our technology by 2 or 3 centuries easily.
Yeah, exactly. When I know that the technology that we have in space is far more advanced. In fact, one of the first things they told me at Space Command, July 10th, 1994, when I was at the Schriever Air Force Base, east of Colorado Springs, is they said that our 95% of our space technology is aimed out in space to nearest object. So the nearest object program, parts of our program for asteroids, comets, and things like perturbations of our magnetic flux fields and interstellar radiation like gamma bursts, etc. We are intently putting trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars into these projects because we know that we need to have more open, what I call, discussions with Russia and other countries, because we can't just go it on our own and say, you know, this is part of the reason why they have all these blackout projects. Their money's going crazy.
That's right.
So, Christine, I want you to get into this stuff about Earth changes, because it'll all tie in with this, because we know that the Earth is starting to change. We're getting release of radiation everywhere. We're seeing sinkholes, not just off Louisiana, where they've evacuated populations near this salt dome that they've drilled in and put butane in there from a Texas company. But we've got things happening everywhere. What's going on?
Well, I started noticing sinkhole events, not only those, but water breaks and train derailments that have been occurring with alarming frequency. We had 4 separate train derailments in North Carolina in the last 2 weeks. We've had a number of sinkholes around the New York area, in Brooklyn, Bensonhurst, Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and 12 of them along a stretch beach in New Jersey. And the New York City planners that have finally gotten to the pipes underground and were saying that they thought it was from infrastructure, are saying that the pipes are fine even though they're 100 years old. They're not showing signs of corrosion. They're just breaking as if the ground is moving. Now,
right, which makes sense that there's a subsidence occurring. And all the groaning in the earth, we're hearing all these weird sounds in the air, but we're also hearing groaning sounds coming out of the earth. Yeah, I think Minnesota and Wisconsin, you hear all these kind of strange sounds coming right out of the ground.
And, you know, that's still going on, and I see people post frequently about that on my page. Just a few nights ago, it was happening in New York again. And I mapped these out on Google Maps and saw most of what's happening as extending from Louisiana over to Florida and then all the way up the coast to New Hampshire, and it's also happening along the St. Lawrence Seaway and into southern Ontario. And
by the way, right down the center of the St. Lawrence Seaway is a giant fault line.
Exactly, and I pay attention to that fault because it points right at Fermi 2, which is a reactor that sits on Lake Erie. And I want to go over the reactor list too, because the mainstream news is only reporting 4 events right now. There's actually 18 that are going on.
18 nuclear events, meaning like with power outages or other issues going on, right?
Well, we've got 6 plants right now in hot shutdown, and 3 of them that are reporting large detections in their groundwater.
Right, so in other words, they're major, not minor venting, but major tritium leaks, right?
Major leaks. 9 Mile Point in New York, Surrey in Virginia, and River Bend in Louisiana is detecting 432,000 picocuries per liter.
Right, so we're not just dealing with Fukushima, we're dealing with radiation release from the ground, and our reactors are losing containment and releasing not only tritium, but on the verge of major problems, and also where the water levels drop. A lot of these places are not going to be able to keep their reactors cooled because they have to have that water level, otherwise they'll not be able to maintain cooling of the core.
Yeah, we have a few of those right now too.
Yeah, amazing. Continued in one moment with Christina Consolo, John Moore, and Ann Morrison.
Well, we're back to another commercial. Whoa, it's getting intense, I'm telling you. Just have your grab and go bag ready. That's all I got to say. Don't know where you're going to go. It sounds like it's going to be all over. But I guess the higher up you are, the better off you are. So, I don't know. We'll be back in a minute. That was very interesting about the older space station that's way out there by the asteroid belt or wherever it's at. Oh. I guess they're really starting to disclose everything. Oh. Well, I knew it. I knew he was going to back up. I knew John was going to back up what he said. He said that he had information. Okay, let's see if he's back. It might be a short commercial. No, Alex Jones commercial. Remember, no need to panic. Be prepared and do the best you can and pray. And there you go. I don't know. For those who didn't see that movie, 2012, maybe we can get some ideas out of that movie on where to go also.
What do you do?
Oh, commercial. What do you do? All I know is I got my grab and go bag. It's just too many bags, really. If you're a musician, take acoustical instruments with you. You can open your case and maybe make some type of play for food or something, or money. Yep. I don't think the electric guitars will do much for you. They're pretty heavy too to try to carry. If you got an acoustic bass, acoustic whatever, get those ready to go too. Don't forget your instruments. Be handy later down the road to provide entertainment somehow.
20 minutes.
Well, okay, we'll wait. Just start getting everything in order.
And a dead.
Don't forget if you have any, your important papers too. Maybe important phone numbers, pictures. Better start writing everything on a paper. So I got to say, if you have some phone numbers, everything, not that they'll be the same, but if we lose power, you might end up losing your phone numbers and everything. So get a hard copy, put it on a nice little, get a little notebook or something.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
He's back. I like that stuff.
I don't want to be driving into those damn things.
Uh-oh.
They're going to come down real fast. Welcome back, and you had a number of interesting requests, Christina. Tell us about them, because this is significant. You had whistleblowers at a number of places that want to release this information. Number one, have they conveyed any information yet, or are they just threatening to be a whistleblower?
Well, I don't know exactly what their motivations are.
But have they conveyed any information? That's the question. In other words, we don't need to get into their mind. We need to know, do they say something, and can we corroborate it with either scientific logic or any other source of information? Like Lawrence Livermore, you had a contact, and you also had a botanist that wanted to contact you regarding genetics.
Right, and some of the plant mutations that we've been finding and that people are posting. We just have hundreds of images.
By the way, the best way to tell, and I mentioned this, I was on the break, because I did my research on genetic and radiation toxicology back when I was working on my PhD project in '73, is what's called genetic anisotropy, where you basically have heteroptopic chunks of DNA stuck in other chromosomes. So you do a scanning electron microscopy of a plant or an animal with a scraping, even a scraping of the inside of your mouth or a plant cell. If you look at, and you can literally count these under the scanning EM, if you get a high score, it means besides micronuclei, these chunks of DNA that are stuck to the wrong chromosome that are hanging off them like fruit, that tells you how big the radiation damage is. And because of short lifespan, animals like butterflies that are being damaged very badly, and songbirds in Japan, the same damages happen to the unborn, which are 100 billion times more sensitive here in North America, and particularly in Japan. And those levels of anisotropic DNA damage are going to start showing up with more micronuclei, more chunks of DNA in the wrong chromosome, and we're going to start seeing much higher rates of trisomy 13, 18, and 21. The only survivable one pretty well is trisomy 21 for Bella, Rick Santorum's daughter, that had trisomy 18, which is a miracle she survived as long as she did. But this is literally an extinction level event, and the problem is the regular media doesn't want to cover it. We know there are real scientists that want to whistleblow, so tell us what they're saying.
Well, we need access to sophisticated equipment so we can test some of these plants. And I'm encouraging people not only after they photograph it or do a video, put it on YouTube, put mutations in the title, and then take samples and dry them out so we can provide research. We need hard data, and we're not going to know the extent of the contamination. We get those numbers or until a full-scale soil survey is done of the entire United States and Canada. That's the only way we're going to know, and it's probably not going to come from the USGS. But in following, what's going on with these numbers, we've been seeing some really high rad spikes over the past couple of weeks. And I started looking at the earthquake list and compared them to where we've had some of these measurements. Just for example, on August 10th in Charleston, West Virginia, we had 450 CPMs. That was measured on the EPA monitors. Next day, we had a 2.5 magnitude earthquake there. Raleigh, North Carolina, we had over 1,000 CPMs on June 16th. On June 20th, we had a 2.0 there. Omaha, Nebraska, same thing, 460 CPMs. 2 days later, we had a 2.7. And I've got about 20 of these correlations, so I'm sending them to some geologists, too, to get their opinion on whether the limestone, some of the sinkhole events, if there's enough uranium content in limestone. I don't know if Ann knows the answer to that. That would be bumping up these levels. This is really high, even though we've had high numbers since Fukushima.
Yeah, a lot of places don't know it because
going on at the plant unless there's something really dire that's going on there that we don't know about.
Yeah, so in other words, there could be 2-3 sources. Number one, most likely is it's coming from the ground or the plant. We know that these are probably not Fukushima, believe it or not. Even though we're looking for Fukushima, it's strange that we had Fukushima to kind of give us a heads up. So we start looking for radiation, but it's coming from the ground underneath us.
Right, or it's coming from releases from plants that we have around us. In the majority.
Right, and these plants have been releasing all along. We know that they've had all kinds of events, but they just don't, they cover it up. When I was working in 1987-88 in Georgia, we had the Savannah River plant. There were 2 plants, the Hanford plant and the Savannah River plant, to make the plutonium detonators for our warheads. The main one now that makes the plant detonators is the Savannah River plant, which also makes all the MOX-2 reactor pellets that the senators tried to sell. Yeah, Grassley, and so tried to sell to the 25 Mark I reactors, GE reactors, and convert them from regular to what's called hot plutonium MOX-1 reactors, believe it or not. All those pellets came from the Savannah River plant, and the year before I started, they had a major event release. And that radiation apparently was so bad that the vehicles that got contaminated, they actually dug a hole in the parking lot. They were too radioactive to move, and dropped all the vehicles into the hole and covered it up and concrete capped it. So they told us not to worry. We had radiation suits, we had everything, because we were just a few miles away in Augusta, Georgia, from the Savannah River plant, because we were the closest large facility with a trauma and burn unit, and that we would have, they had radiation detectors, and they were going to fully supported, no problem, but don't damn well talk to the media or you're dead. D-E-A-D, dead.
Oh,
So these events happen all the time. Savannah River is like ground zero for bad stuff happening in America, because it makes the most dangerous radioactive material on the planet.
Susquehanna, Pennsylvania, this week there was a transfer trailer that had very high cesium-137 contamination. They haven't determined how it got on the trailer or what they're going to do with that truck. Interesting, you would measure the
Right. Well, I remember I was the incident doctor with Dr. John Hughes, who was a reserve admiral, and he had a contract with Rocky Mountain and Rocky Flats back in 1997. And we had one incident where a liquid radioactive waste trailer coming up the I-70 slid off the black ice in the middle of winter, and they had to pull it off so it didn't end up in the Colorado River with liquid radioisotopes, because it would have made the entire southwest U.S. radioactive with plutonium and other nasty isotopes that would kill most living things down water. And they managed to get the thing back up, but there was nothing in the news. Everybody was warned, you talk, you're dead. And we're not just talking about getting fired, we're talking about dead.
Even without the earth changes going on, which are very alarming when you consider how many new plants we have in the same area that all these things are occurring and how many are having problems right now. I mean, you imagine.
Yeah, that's a lot of problems.
Here.
So, John, what do you think of all these issues happening? Literally, with, I've got this gut feeling that the next big 2 areas of quakes are, number 1, New Madrid, number 2, the San Andreas fault system. And I would put a 3-to-1 risk higher that it's going to be New Madrid. And there's 25 Mark I type reactors and other reactors sitting right within strike zone of the New Madrid fault system. What do you think will happen?
Well, they're both at risk, and the New Madrid seismic zone is potentially the most powerful and most deadly on the planet. And there's pipelines going from Texas to the northeast, right over the New Madrid seismic zone. All the nuclear plants you're talking about, the Mississippi Valley with all the bridges in the river, a couple of good-sized cities, St. Louis and Memphis, at great risk. So there's a lot of potential for great harm from anything happening on the New Madrid.
One thing I've shared on previous shows, probably a year or so ago, is I had one of these standing visions a number of years ago, where it was after the earth changes had happened, and I took a car ferry across the Midwest waterway, and it took a number of hours to cross it.
Right.
So in other words, whenever the earth is going to change, believe it or not, it's like a zipper opening for the center of the United States. There's going to be a water eventually open between the Great Lakes and the Gulf of Mexico. It will go right through this fault line zone.
Right. Well, it'll set up ferries, and you may sit for 10 to 12 hours waiting for a ferry ride that takes another 8 or 10 hours to get across this water.
Right. In fact, the one that I recall, and this was so vivid, I could smell the seawater. I remember how long I was on the ferry on this standing vision. It was 5 hours. to cross.
That would be consistent with my reality. Right.
Yeah. So, and I don't know what it is. When people say, "Oh, DEAGLE, we are setting a date," I don't have any dates. I can just tell you, when you have a vision that's that vivid, just like the one that I had a standing vision about Tehran, they've green-lighted. Both Obama and Romney have green-lighted an attack on Iran. Militarily, they can't control the ground. John, what's going to happen if they try to do an air attack? And of course, we have these rockets systems all over Iran and all over Iran. It's one-third the size of the United States, half of it's mountainous. A lot of them are false missile silo sites. Their nuclear facilities are so deep, even our best bunker buster bombs can't get them. And there's no way.
They'll start up a harness nest, and the Muslim nations will probably unify as one to meet this threat.
Exactly. In other words, the ancient Muslims, Arabs saying long before Islam, long before even Jesus Christ and Muhammad, is me and my brother against my cousin, me and my cousin against my enemy. And if you want to unify them, just do something like this and see what happens.
Absolutely.
Crazy things are happening. So yes, we're journalistically following this. It's not disinformation. We are trying to dig through as much as we can. All I can tell you is, if you aren't prepared now with food, water, self-protection, and electricity, if you're not ready for major events happening, including Fukushima, Reactor 4 blowing, New Mandarin system, I'm not going to say God help you, because He told us to tell you to get ready.
Well, I'm not sure if that's the end of the show or not. I'll find out in a few minutes. It sounds like it is, but I'm not sure. Might be a little bit more left. We'll check it out in a few minutes. Right now they're at commercial break. But yes, please get ready. You know, once you see what you really might need, you know, you take all your important stuff, then you can downsize if you need to. All the extra stuff you don't need. Have a garage sale or something. Well, we'll see when the commercial comes back. I think he's done now.
37.
Because, see, it loops back around.
For over 15 years.
Usually they give the websites at the end and stuff. He might have gave them at the beginning, though. I think he did. But let's see. I wish this part of the show was at least 2 hours long. You can't cover it all in an hour with commercials. We'll see. We'll wait and see. We don't want to miss anything. Alright, just be prepared. Alrighty then. Well, I got to clean up a lot of stuff around the house. Let's see what's going on. This might be the beginning.
Welcome back to the NutriMedical Report live for Friday, the firing line on the 17th day of August of 2012. And Michelle, it should be...
Yeah, alright. That's it. You have a wonderful evening. Very important information on here. I'll put that out right now, and then I'm gonna hit the hay. You go to have a good night. See you on the flip side.